We're live, Adam.
Perfect. Thank you, Du. Good morning, everybody. Today is Tuesday, October 11th, and I'd like to start today's special meeting for the Ad Hoc Advisory Committee for our Resource Conservation District. We'll move on to item 1, and we will call the order by Tammy and take a roll call.
Good morning, thank you. Darcy Cook is absent. Heather Conklin,
Hi, present, and Darcy will be joining us shortly. She's having trouble logging on.
okay, thank you. Ann Ballridge,
Present.
Don Butts,
Present.
Amy Ree,
Present.
Andy Lyle,
Present.
Dave Neeson,
Present.
Mary Matava,
Present.
Frank
Here. Hilliker, here.
Hilliker. Thank you. Did Darcy Cook come on? Not yet. So you have a quorum, a virtual quorum with 8 members present.
Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.
Moves us on to item number 3, which is the agenda review by myself, the moderator. I don't have any changes to the agenda, but I think maybe this would be a good opportunity since we did the roll call. Maybe if we could take maybe a minute from each member to kind of introduce themselves, give us their name, their representative, what they do, just so that we can get familiar with everybody's name and organization, and get familiar with everybody's faces before we get to work here. So again, just take maybe a minute or 2 to introduce yourself, and let's start with maybe Heather, and maybe I'll go in a full circle here.
Hi, good morning. My name is Heather Conklin, and I am the board president for Mission Resource Conservation District.
And as she indicated, Darcy Cook is their executive director, and she'll be joining us very shortly. Ann?
Good morning. I'm Ann Baldridge. I'm the Executive Director at the Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego County.
And Don, since you're in the same umbrella there.
Yeah, Don Butts, Board President of the RCD of Greater San Diego.
And moving on to our third conservation district of Amy and Andy. Do you two want to introduce yourself real quick?
Go ahead, Andy.
Oh, okay. I'm Andy. I'm the president of the Upper San Luis Rey Resource Conservation District. I took over a few years back when our former president Jesse retired, and my day job is I'm a citrus and avocado grower here in Palma Valley. I'm 4th generation. My family's been here for around 90 years. I'm just now doing the math, so been out here for a while. The family has been anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy?
My name is Amy Ray, and I am the general manager of Uwima Municipal Water District, and we contract to manage the Upper San Luis Rey RCD. So I'm also the general manager of the RCD.
Thank you. So those were our 6 representatives from the 3 resource conservation districts, and we also have 3 at-large members. And Frank, do you want to start?
Sure. Frank Hilliker, owner of Hilliker's Ranch Fresh Eggs, and elected to Lakeside Water District since 1998. I also currently have been on the board of directors for the San Diego County Water Authority since 2007, where I am now board secretary.
Thanks, Frank. Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary Matava, and I have a company agri-service where we do municipal composting. We used to do have a soil testing laboratory for about 20 years. I farm avocados up in North Oceanside and run the El Corazon compost facility and the Otay Mesa compost facility, and I'm currently president of Farm Bureau.
Thanks, Mary. And last but not least, Dave?
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Dave Nissen, Deputy Chief with the San Diego County Fire Protection District,
in the Community Risk Reduction Division.
Awesome. And maybe we'll introduce LAFCO staff. Again, I'm Adam Wilson, serving as moderator to the ad hoc committee, and present we also have Keen Simons. Do you want to quickly say something real quick?
I do. So thank you, everybody, for participating in this event that I anticipate will go on for a good number of months. So Keen Simons, I've been at San Diego LAFCO now for just about 5 years. I've been paying attention to RCDs, though, for about 20 years and have actually quite a bit of interest and admiration for the work you do. And I think through this process, you will see that LAFCO staff is a friend to the RCDs. And I'll have some more comments a little later on in the agenda. But nevertheless, so Adam is our moderator. In order, and this will test them, can we hear from Alex, Tammy, Erica, and Priscilla?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Kiragosin. I'm the Deputy General Counsel. The General Counsel for San Diego LAFCO's, her name is Holly Watley. I serve as General Counsel to a number of special districts, including a sanitary district and a healthcare district, and I currently serve also as a city attorney for the city of Sierra Madre up in Los Angeles County.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tammy Luckett. I'm the commission clerk with San Diego LAFCO. I've been with LAFCO for 18 years and overall with the county, so I have 23 years in. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Erica Blum. I am the executive assistant with LAFCO, and I've been with LAFCO for just over 7 years now.
Good morning, everyone. Priscilla Mumpower. I'm an analyst with San Diego County LAFCO. I've been with LAFCO for just over 2 years now, and I see a lot of familiar faces. I've been working with you all on the SALT grant, so great to see you all on here as well.
And then Adam, I forgot the great Do New. Do.
Hi, I'm Du. I just maintain a lot of the LAFCO websites and IT.
You do so much more, Do. But thank you for being brief. All right, thank you, Adam.
No problem. And I think Darcy's here, and we informally introduced you, Darcy, but do you want to introduce yourself if you're here?
Sure, good enough. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I had some issues this morning with my computer at the last minute. So yeah, I'm Darcy Cook. I serve as the district manager at Mission RCD in Fallbrook. I've been here just over 2 years, and it's great to see all of you here and to have my board president here. And I think I know just about all of you. So thanks for being part of this.
Thanks, Darcy. And I do want to just reemphasize, I appreciate everybody's time and commitment today, especially the 9 members that have raised their hand and elected to serve on the ad hoc committee and commit their time to our endeavors and our work efforts and so forth. So I'm excited that we're all together here today and really appreciate your time again. So that will move us on to item number 4, which is public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to provide comments on a non-agenda topic germane to the ad hoc advisory committee. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and I will check with Tammy to see if we have any members of the public that have submitted any slips in wishing to speak today.
No comments received.
Thank you. That concludes that item. We will now move on to our business items, which are under subcategory 5. We will start with 5A, which is the ad hoc committee's development and future role. This is where I will provide a general overview of the ad hoc committee's formation, a quick summary, and a broad framework of our collective efforts moving forward. So I want to just briefly go over why we're here and give some general context to our meeting. A real quick history. Resource conservation districts were formed up and down in the state in the late 1930s to the early 1940s. This was all response to the Dust Bowl at the time. And back then, RCDs predominantly focused on two issues, soil erosion and floods. And over time, they have vastly evolved and their missions have strengthened to meet the constant changing ever needs of conservation. Today, RCDs have a wide array of programs, including, but not limited to agriculture, water, fire prevention, wild conservation, climate change, and other educational and technical programs. And that's quickly while I'll note why we do have the 3 at-large members that are a part of the composition of this group to focus on that expertise of those 3 main areas involving agriculture, water, and fire prevention. But based on this new world reality that the RCDs face today, LAFCO performed a municipal service review in February of 2021. And essentially the goal back then was to make sure that LAFCO's rules and regulations aligned with all the current services and programs being provided by our local 3 RCDs. The MSR concluded a host of takeaways, all which were highlighted in the executive summary that I shared with you previously that I hope many of you got a chance to review. And from that document, LAFCO's perspective, and probably the most important takeaway, was that the RCD's services that are being provided need to reflect the current boundaries that exist. And Keen and I will go into a little more detail about that later, which is also known as Government Code Section 56133. But that's essentially why we're here today, to kind of align your organizations and our agency together. And more importantly, through that MSR, we want to identify the actionable items in that MSR and find workable solutions. So earlier this year, I met with the 3 RCDs, both individually and collectively as a group. And the consensus amongst all of them was they wanted to make sure LAFCO's needs were being met, but also the RCD's missions were being represented to best serve their organizations, programs, and communities. So through LAFCO's commission direction, this RCD ad hoc committee was formed, and I'm excited for us to work together and find an end goal. Lastly, our expectation moving forward is probably to meet approximately once a month for the next 3 to 4 to 5 months, and eventually take a final product to the LAFCO Commission sometime next spring. So that's essentially a very 30,000-foot level overarching view on why we're here, and maybe perhaps give an opportunity to any members of the RCDs to, if there's anything that I missed or anything that maybe you want to fill in from your guys' perspective of why we're collectively here, perhaps this is the best and appropriate opportunity to kind of just give your 2 cents as well. So. And if you don't have any comment and I synopsis that real well, then we can perhaps move on. Alex, see your hand up.
Yeah, just to follow Brown Act protocols, if you don't mind, we can just take a public comment on each item before you move on to the next one.
Perfect, will do. Heather, I saw your hand go up and down.
I'll just wait until we kind of get to those respective items before I weigh in.
Okay. Any other comments or any other questions from anyone? Okay. All righty. Having seen none or hear none, that will conclude business item 5A. And actually, before we conclude it, as Alex just reminded me, Tammy or Erica, do we have any current submittals from the members of the public or any submittals in advance wishing to comment or speak?
I have not received any public comments from the public.
And so far, no live email comments.
Thank you. That will conclude item 5A. Moving on to item 5B. This is additional information from our executive officer, Keen Simons. He's going to provide the committee with general information related to LAFCO policy and procedures, and provide his overall expectations to the process and our eventual end product. So Keen.
Thank you, Adam. So couple of upfront observations to help frame this initial meeting of the group. and kind of teeing it up for then the next agenda item where Adam's going to start talking with all of you in developing kind of a to-do list, right? So as Adam mentioned, a few years back now, right before COVID, or give and take, before COVID, we completed an MSR process for all the RCDs in San Diego County. And that process certainly evolved in a way that we weren't necessarily expecting. So a couple of things, and these are, I'm going to go back and forth between commission observations and LAFCO statute. The first observation we really had was, and understandably so, if not all, certainly a good amount of the RCD's orientation here in San Diego seemingly operates more like a nonprofit organization than, let's say, your typical fire protection district or other local government unit. And so we had, our own reorientation towards that world. And one of the things that quickly became apparent is the lack of uniformity when it comes to the district's services and their jurisdictional boundaries. So, keep in mind, the reason why, myself, Adam, Du, Priscilla, Erica, Tammy, are employed in this world is to maintain jurisdictional boundaries, right? And so not only do you have a jurisdictional boundary, which is your sovereign area blessed by LAFCO through the legislature of this is where you serve, we also create these spheres of influence. And we update them every so often. And the sphere is the state's version of, let's say, an urban or a growth boundary for your agency, where we anticipate down the line, you're going to extend services, preferably through annexation, but there is the outlier process of outside service extensions. Well, so what we first noticed was that to some degree, now maybe not Upper San Luis Rey, maybe Andy and Amy get a star here, but some tough love here for Mission and RCD of Greater San Diego. There was quite a few services that were going outside of your boundary that gave us some heartburn. Certainly, as Adam takes this up on the next item, we want to focus first and foremost in understanding exactly where your districts provide services now in relationship to your boundary and sphere, and then certainly where you anticipate perhaps the need and benefit of your services within the next 5 to 10 years. And that's going to inform perhaps some holistic syncing up of your boundary and or sphere. And we'll get into the details later. What we also came across when we were doing the MSR was, for whatever the reason, I think we encountered some problematic relations that had been embedded, most notably with Mission and Greater San Diego, in terms of having agreements and not necessarily agreeing to what those agreements said, right? And so one of the things that has become clear to us is the need for a real emphasis on our end to clean up on outside service extensions. And whether they are technically exempt from LAFCO review or require LAFCO review, the commission is really going to bird dog this when it comes to the RCDs. And then holistically, it would be fair to say that all special districts are scrutinized to a degree about opportunities to consolidate and or share services, whether it's through a functional consolidation or a political consolidation. Our preference would be to be a version of a matchmaker here, and allow the 3 districts to identify what you all do really well, and then identify areas where you can mix and match through authorized shared service arrangements, areas to complement one another. And ideally, 20 years from now, the 3 RCDs remain as is and are doing really great, and you have clear defined boundaries, clear defined service areas, and it's a love fest. That said, this process may also identify that, maybe the shared services could benefit from a political consolidation. Now, that's a big lift, but I don't want to take that off the table. I want to be clear about managing expectations that maybe there are benefits to either a short-term, immediate consolidation, or maybe setting up the chessboard for the eventual consolidations over a 20-year period. Now, that's not our priority at all. Our priority would be to have 3 thriving RCDs operating as you see fit, but having some very clear boundaries and service areas. So as we proceed forward, Adam has been tasked on our end to help with the coordination of the 3 RCDs with the help of our at-large members in identifying solutions to a system that does not work right now. Okay, so all 3, well, again, Upper San Luis Rey may have a reprieve here, but certainly with RCD of Greater San Diego Mission, we have already concluded that right now something has to give. Either you start annexing lands to memorialize your service areas, or come to us with outside service agreements, or Alex drops the weight of the LAFCO hammer on you. One or the other is going to happen. And we have this RCD committee process to see about the first happening, that we clean up the boundaries and whatnot. And then where we can't clean up the boundaries, we have outside service agreements that pass muster. So separate to this, right, the syncing of boundaries and service areas, one of the other aspects that came to us is we had trouble understanding exactly what are appropriate categories of service functions for RCDs. I am aware, but I will defer to Don Butts, given his position in the statewide association, that there was some legislation that was introduced. I don't know what the status was.
It was
Heather,
signed
looks
by
like
the governor. Yeah,
It
it
was
was signed by
signed-
the governor. It's AB 1902 is what you're referring to, correct?
Very good. So part of this process is taking that legislation and incorporating it into our policies with all of your help. I think that's a good goal. So that said, again, the first and foremost idea is to get right with the LAFCO statutes. And then once we get good with that, in process of getting good with that, identify with all of your help as a matchmaker where the 3 districts can go going forward in some level of harmony. Whether it's manufactured or organic, it's going to happen. So that said, Adam, that's my take. And I know that as you, either as this item or the next item, I would very much appreciate, just for my own orientation, hearing from each one of the members as to what their goal would be here, so it can help calibrate LAFCO staff too. So Adam, with that, I'm certainly available for questions and maybe offer some thoughts as we go forward.
Yeah, I think it may be appropriate this time if there's any general comments or questions to what Keen highlighted, that would be best now, but just kind of foreshadowing very quickly to our next item, I've provided some sort of, which I'll display through Due here in a moment when we get there, but some sort of prospective draft working agenda, kind of a blueprint or whatever, through the meetings that I've had with the 3 RCDs over the last year, and kind of just, like I said, develop a working agenda that kind of hits on every kind of point or some of the points that that Keen highlighted, and certainly it's a working document that we can add or subtract from. But at this point in time, I think generally speaking, if there's any response to Keen's kind of overview, we could do that now. And Darcy, I see your hand up. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Keen, for that overview. And yeah, I have three things I'd like to just quickly respond to what you said. First of all, your statement that something has to give. This is really the first that I've heard about that. You know, we've gone through the MSR process. We submitted our response to that. You know, Adam has met with us. We set up this ad hoc, group. That's pretty strong language to just sort of come out of the blue, at least to my perspective here. I also think that the problems that we've had with all three RCDs, they predate me, they predate Amy, and they predate Ann. And I think the three of us, with and without Adam, have worked really hard to establish relationships together. We've tried to work together. We've tried to cooperate with each other. And you also mentioned harmony. I think we're on that path. And maybe Amy and Ann will have a slightly different perspective to that, but that's certainly where I come from and how I've worked with them. Thank you.
Adam, can I follow up on that? So Darcy,
Absolutely.
here nor there with respect to the harmony that the three of you have created, that have hopefully generated. But I'm a bit puzzled by your comment about the first you're hearing that there are issues with LAFCO. Can you help me walk my mental exercise of how this is news to you, that the Mission RCD hasn't had issues with LAFCO?
No, I think maybe we're misunderstanding each other. Your statement that something has to give is what has taken me aback. We went through that MSR process, we followed that. We followed the directions. We submitted our response to that, which we have adhered to. So I just feel that saying something has to give here is somewhat strong language from where we've been working.
Well, respectfully, yeah, it is strong language, Darcy. And I want to remain positive here, but the Mission RCD still provides services outside its boundary, yes or no?
I think it depends. And I think that's something that we're trying to work out here. I think that is the reason for the ad hoc committee, at least to my, nascent understanding of this group.
Okay, no, I agree. And we're going to work towards that, but that's what has to give. That's the friction at LAFCO that was identified starting back, certainly before you came aboard, but starting back in 2017. It's 2022 now. So I think my comments are certainly well-grounded.
And I'm not arguing if your comments are well-grounded or not. And again, that was before my time, but I looked at and worked with a lot of the other RCDs in my short tenure here, and many of them work outside of their boundaries. Many of them have sphere of influences. So I think that it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not apples and apples when you talk about RCDs. But I'm not trying to argue with you. I was given an opportunity to make my statement.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Heather?
Hi, thank you, Keen. Thank you, Adam. And thank you all. So just to, I guess, my take on, what the goal is at this point for this ad hoc committee. I mean, first and foremost is, to have these conversations. Some of these are difficult conversations to have. And so I appreciate everybody being here and being open-minded. A piece too that I think might be really helpful is just making sure that LAFCO understands sort of the nuance and the details around how RCDs are structured, how RCDs are funded, and how RCDs tend to operate, not just in this county, but broadly across the state, because RCDs are, yes, we are a special district, but we are a special kind of special district. And so RCDs operate very differently than other types of special districts like water districts or sewer districts. And so that's just something that I think maybe this conversation that we have in the months moving forward might also allow the opportunity to make sure that everybody is well informed about how RCDs are structured, again, both legislatively, and then again, what that looks like in the future too, because RCDs, we do resource conservation. We're addressing climate change. The has a whole host of climate change mandates at this point that are being pushed down to the local level, and that RCDs are, in part responsible for meeting those mandates in the communities that they serve. And then same goes for the county. And so it's a really interesting time for all these conversations to be had. So I think there's an opportunity for all of us to educate each other about how RCDs can really be an asset, but also how RCDs actually function, because I think that will help LAFCO in the future, evaluate RCDs appropriately, and also help all of us collaborate better, because there's a lot going on right now. So that's just my comment, my take on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Amy, I see your hand up next. Do you want to?
Sure. So I just wanted to kind of follow up on the interaction between Keen and Darcy, and just I have a clarification question for Keen. I wanted to express the fact that Darcy and Ann and I have met, and we are trying to work cohesively together to fill in where, especially for my RCD, it's greatly appreciated the help that I get from Mission and Greater especially, because we're just very small and we don't have the funding that these two RCDs have. And so entering into MOUs with them for them to be able to provide services that I can't provide, that our RCD can't provide, has been very, very helpful to our RCD. And I would hate for something to arise that would make that go by the wayside. And also in regards to those MOUs, Keen, for clarification, and I don't know all the issues that went on with Greater and Mission in regards to operating outside of their jurisdictional boundaries, but as long as we have an MOU for them to perform services, we're all clear, right? There's nothing wrong with them then operating in my RCD's boundaries as long as it's according to the MOU. Is that correct? Am I understanding that properly?
Yes, Amy, and the way you've been doing them have been very helpful when you send us a heads up saying, hey, does this meet the intentions of the statute? And I think we've provided the follow-ups reasonably quickly. But yes, if the two agencies are in agreement and it conforms to the statute that we have to operate under, you're good.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Ann, I think you're next.
Well, thanks. Yeah, just to echo, what Darcy and Amy said, I think we have been making a lot of efforts to collaborate, and we all really see the value in collaboration. And I mean, just to preface this, I've only been in this role for just a little less than a year, but I've been with RCD for a long time. In thinking about the services that we offer outside of our district boundary, those are either through an MOU, such as with Upper San Luis Rey, or they're within our sphere of influence. So at least for me personally, I was never quite clear on how that works. Like if we wanted to provide a service outside of our sphere of influence, like what that process is. And I think that could be worked on to be more clear of, that differentiation between the boundary and the sphere of influence. So I look forward to talking about those things during this committee. And to echo kind of what Keen and Rachel were both saying, RCDs do provide slightly different services. We all kind of do the same types of things, but the actual services offered are based on the need of the local area. And I think that's something that's really special and unique about RCDs. So yeah, and I think with the new changes approved to AB 1902, I think that's emphasized there, that we do provide different services, and the services that we do provide have grown and changed over the years. Thanks.
Thanks, Ann. And I'll just quickly echo too, because I've met with the three RCDs individually and collectively, like I said, and I will echo what they said, is that there is a lot of collaboration that is both current and prospective, that they wish to work together. I think the tone is to try to find a working solution to make their world match with ours. And respective to Keen's comments, is change does need to happen. And so whether it's LAFCO's obscure world of trying to kind of link up that side with this side, that's what we're here for today. But I agree with Keen that we do have to make some change. We have to align with what your services are doing and providing, and align them with our rules and regulations. and be respective to your worlds as too, as Heather indicated. So it's a learning process on both ends, but I think through this group, my goal is to get a working product that works for us collectively. So any other comments or questions from any other members of the committee? Okay, having seen none, I will move to Tammy and Erica and check through our public comment vehicle if anybody from the member of the public has submitted comments as we deliberate today, or if they've submitted any prior comments before our commencement.
I have not received any comments for item 5B.
And no live email comments.
Thank you. Okay, that will conclude item 5B. Keen, thank you for your overview, which will move us to business item 5C. And this is kind of the meat and the potatoes of why we're here. And this is tasking the ad hoc committee and trying to highlight issues of most important to LAFCO, which Keen indicated, and provide the ad hoc committee with a framework to work from in order to develop and find consensus for a working agenda. So at this time, I'll ask Dew if he could kind of put up and display just a working document that I put together. It's very brief, it's very broad, it's very overview, but it's a prospective draft working agenda that I kind of want to highlight. And it's based off some of the meetings that I've had with the 3 executive directors of the RCDs, some of the communication that we've had internally with staff. And again, this is a working document, so I want to make sure that whether it's we add to it, subtract to it, I want to find by the end of this item that we kind of come together and establish some expectations of what we're going to do as a group moving forward. So the first one, which is kind of what Keen hinted on of most important as I highlighted as well, is all 3 RCDs need to identify any inconsistencies between RCD boundaries and current service activities. And I think the first task that we would ask you to do subsequent to this meeting is to task you to provide us with your known boundary and all the current services that you provide and where you provide them. And perhaps with that information, we can cross-check what you know with what's in LAFCO's world to kind of make sure that we have our bearings both physically of where your boundaries are and a complete understanding of the full services that you provide and where you provide them. So maybe we just do these one at a time. And I see Heather's hands up already, and perhaps she's got comment to this one and or more.
Hi, yes, thank you. Actually, so for the first one, before we even have a conversation about boundaries, I really do think it would be beneficial for everybody to make sure that we understand, again, like I said in my prior comment, how RCDs are structured, how we operate, and again, what it looks like when we actually do provide those resource conservation and other environmental services, both within our boundaries and when we work together in collaboration. I do think that like a really good working understanding of how the RCDs, the 3 of us here function, would be really helpful. And again, that also ties back to some of the changes, again, in reference to AB 1902 that just was recently signed by the governor. Again, really, making sure that we're orienting ourselves in what is current, what is correct, and so that everybody has the same working understanding as we move forward, because there's no sense in having a conversation about services and boundaries if that doesn't make sense with how RCDs are structured and how RCDs tend to operate. So I want to kind of bring those things into alignment too, as we then have that conversation more specifically. But I just want to kind of say maybe number 1 is really making sure that we're all understanding how things actually are laid out. Again, both operationally for each of the RCDs themselves and how they actually operate, but also structurally, which is of course beyond any of the individual RCDs.
And Heather, just for my expectation, I mean, obviously we're limited with time today, and I don't think we'll get the end game to that kind of overarching umbrella as you've highlighted today. But certainly, maybe like I said, this is a working document. Maybe we add that as number 1 instead, and maybe you and I work offline, or the three RCDs and I work offline to come sort of get that framework of what you guys do, how you do it, how you're structured, how you're funded. and how you operate. And yeah, that might give some broader context of our ultimate conversation and working efforts here.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yep. Dawn?
Yeah, I do want to echo what Heather said. I think we should include, and I didn't see your entire list, but I do think we need to make sure that we look at the latest legislation, which is 1902, and use that as our guidepost, because that's changed the 1970 and 1930s and 40s enactment. The other item too is, and I think we need to be clear when we use terms, boundaries, and on your first bullet that you had up there, I think we need to define what you mean by boundary, because I can tell you coming into this as a board member, gosh, 2017, 16, 15, somewhere in there, the boundaries that my district referred to was our sphere of influence. And we were under the impression that that was our boundary for service. And I think it's an educational process, and we need to make sure we're all using the same terms going forward. So what I have learned since then with Keen's enlightenment is that the boundary is the actual, what every other district calls a boundary. Sphere of influence is exactly like Keen has defined it earlier. And I think we need to make sure when we talk boundaries, we use Keen's definitions of the geopolitical boundary, not the sphere of influence.
Don, duly noted, and I think that's kind of the goal of item one, is to kind of hear from you of what your guys' expectations of what your boundaries are, where your services are, where you're providing them. If your interpretation is the sphere of influence and you have that ability to provide within, is to get all that information from your guys' end, give it to us, let us cross-check it with our maps, cross-check it with our statutes. And then if there are differences, then we can have that conversation. But I think that's ultimately the goal, to kind of get to that consensus that we're both speaking the same languages when we talk about jurisdictional lines and the services that are provided within them and with outside them. So Keen, I don't know if you have anything more to add to that, or okay.
No, I know that was a learning curve for me.
Yeah.
When Keen came as the executive director and we started engaging. And I do want to say I appreciate LAFCO's engagement, because prior the RCDs were the neglected district. We were the best kept secret in this county. And I don't even think LAFCO knew we were there. And no offense to prior executive directors or anybody else, but we operated very much in a silo. And we operated very much in silos from each other for a while there. And I do want to commend the executive directors for the three reaching out and trying to develop some synergy and some communications and some collaboration. So thank you for allowing me to make that statement.
Any other comments or questions regard to Heather's suggestion that we add maybe a first bullet in front of the one that I provided that would give kind of an umbrella framework of the structure of RCDs and how they operate, and then also the task to or the first task to the RCDs to kind of collectively get their work together to disclose what they think their boundaries are and their services are, and provide that information to us so that we can find some sort of consensus from our worlds and make sure that we're all matched here. Darcy, thumbs up. Perfect. Okay, dude, you want to throw that document back up and maybe we can move on to item 2? So item 2 is if any RCD wants to continue and or start services beyond their boundaries, they need to game plan via 3 potential solutions. One of those is LAFCO approval via Government Code 56133. And those are out of service contracts agreements that are green lighted through the approval process of the LAFCO Commission. A second option would be to expand their boundaries and work through the LAFCO process. And the third solution would be any potential MOUs between organizations. And so, again, once we identify those boundaries, If we see any inconsistencies between boundaries and services being provided, and we've in agreement with that, we then want to start working with you to try to link up and sync up and harmonize what you're doing and make sure that you're following the rules and regulations of the statutes and government codes that we operate under, and make sure that they are being appropriately provided and legally and lawfully provided. So, Keen, do you have anything more to add from your perspective on this, or? Any other RCD comments, questions, concerns?
This is Darcy. I just say that seems reasonable to me.
This is Don. I thought even for C, a potential MOU between the agencies still required LAFCO consensus. If we're operating outside of our boundary, even if we have an MOU. So is that where I'm?
Yeah. So, and that's a good question, Don. So, there are exemptions that are in this particular statute. One of which is, and the exemption is, it doesn't require formal LAFCO review. And one of those exemptions is if there's an agreement between two or more public agencies where the service being provided or contracted to be provided is an equal substitute. However, and Don, to your point, LAFCO still needs to sign off on that exemption being appropriately applied. So if Greater San Diego has a out-of-service contract to provide a particular service in Upper San Luis Rey, and Upper San Luis Rey has the otherwise means to provide that service on its own, but it's more effective for various reasons to let Greater San Diego provide it. Well, notionally, I would assume we would then say, yeah, you're fine. And that's done at the executive officer level. However, just for the benefit of completing the thought, should Greater San Diego enter into a contract to provide a level and class of service with Upper San Luis Rey, within Upper San Luis Rey's boundary, that notionally Upper San Luis Rey has no ability now or has not established the ability to provide, and it's beyond their scope of services, well then notionally we'd probably say, I don't know if that qualifies for an exemption because it's not a substitute for an equal service, but it's something we would talk to you and the other agency about.
Okay, that adds clarity.
Thanks, Keen. Any other questions or comments? Okay, having seen none, we'll generally provide agreement there, and we'll move on to number 3. LAFCO will work with the RCDs and other stakeholders in proposing rewrite to the RCD Principal Act. And I will fully confess, I'm not by far at all the expert in the Principal Act. I know I think there are things going on currently up in the legislature or other workings that are trying to address these matters. And perhaps maybe the RCDs can kind of weigh in on this a little more and kind of highlight what those issues are and what those end goals would be to kind of rework that act in which they operate from. Heather, I see your hand up.
Hi. Yeah, thank you so much. I don't know that this is something that this working group should be focusing on at this point, given that, again, a pretty substantial rewrite or update, should I say, to the RCD's Principal Act was just passed. And, that conversation is continuing within the legislature at this point, and that's where that conversation belongs. It does not belong at this level with individual LAFCOs, with individual RCDs. It really is a conversation at the level. It needs to be within the legislature. And so that conversation continues. It continues with the organizations that work with the legislature to have those broader conversations, because any sort of rewrite or update to RCD's principal acts don't just affect the RCDs here in San Diego County, but ultimately they affect RCDs at the state. And again, this is where you get to, you know, Darcy's comment that, you know, we're not comparing apples to apples when we talk about different RCDs, right? RCDs are all very, very different and unique. And as Ann said, are, you know, created, their services were created to meet the needs of their specific local community that they serve. So I do just want to make that comment that I'm not sure that this is something that, you know, we should be focusing on at this point.
For educational purposes, did I hear you or mishear you that the legislature just passed a rewrite of the Principal Act?
So AB 1902 was an update.
Okay, update.
Yeah, an update. So I mean, it updated significantly, but again, the previous update was done, you know, since the 1970s. And so it was a pretty big update given the time that's passed, you know, since the last one. So again, I don't know what the focus is, or if that conversation's been had, or in terms of what LAFCO is thinking needs to continue to be either totally rewritten or updated. I think it's a conversation to have, but I'm not sure it's a conversation to have within this working group at this moment, because it is a conversation that will be continuing within the legislature, I think, moving forward.
Keen?
So I think I would generally agree with Heather's comments that we maybe sidebar this, but we continue to have it on our radar, because so I was just scanning that bill that got signed. I think there still may be some issues that would warrant us to flag as part of this process, and then as appropriate, send it up our appropriate mother associations radar as to things that might be worth as further cleanup. And so then here's another comment, and it speaks to another otherwise merited observation by Heather and others, which is this concept that, you know, each RCD is unique and whatnot, and certainly that is true. The push and pull of that, though, is, you know, there is some uniformity expectation on LAFCO that you have a boundary, you have a sphere, you have authorized service functions. And with that trinity, you know, you proceed along your local way. And so I think that a theme here is emerging where, yeah, I think it'd be helpful to revisit and better understand the you know, how an RCD operates given local conditions. That can only help LAFCO and help this group. But also, we don't have much wiggle room on our goal line here in terms of what LAFCO's tasked with, which is, again, this trinity idea that you have authorized service functions, you have a boundary, and you have a sphere of influence. So just want to keep that on the radar as well. But maybe as a suggestion to where Heather was going, maybe we move number 3 off to the side. I think it was number 3, the legislative, and maybe just revisit that as this committee goes along its process at a later date.
Yeah, so I'm hearing we kind of tabled the Principal Act item, but keep it on our radar, since things that may come out of our efforts here may be able to be relayed through other higher channels subsequent to our efforts here.
Adam, if I could add,
Yeah, please, Don.
1902 was influenced by the challenges in San Diego County. Not wholeheartedly, but because there are other challenges throughout the state, but the mission creep that's occurred in RCDs throughout the state is really evident here in San Diego County with the direction we've gone outside the Principal Act. So the fact that the things we're doing now today, these 3 districts are where we tried to reflect that in the change of 1902, but there's still work to be done. And one of those is baseline funding for all districts. So we're not this, you know, we can get away from this concept that we're quasi-government. We're not quasi-government. We are a special district. And we provide a service, and we should be like any other governmental body that receives a tax base. So just food for thought. I agree with putting it in a parking lot to revisit it. And then where we see that we don't fit in, we should go back and advocate for legislative change, and that can be coupled with baseline funding. And
Thanks, Don.
it'll be, and this working group will have that influence.
Gotcha. Heather? Oh, you
I just give a thumbs up. Yeah, I agree with Don. Yeah, thank you, Don.
I confused it with a hand. I apologize. Okay, so I think we have some general consensus there. If there's not any other comments or questions to that matter, we can move on to number 4. Number 4 is help define and establish appropriate listing of RCD's existing functions and applicable classes under LAFCO's statutes, i.e. latent powers and process. And maybe this kind of morphs into what we've been speaking about before in trying to identify what the RCDs do and their structures and how they do it. And the overall powers they may be in trying to coordinate that with LAFCO's rules and regulations and trying to make sure we're both up to date in what we're doing. So Heather?
Yeah, so actually on this one, I think this had come up and I don't remember exactly when, but I think this conversation was started to be had by the Special Districts Advisory Committee for LAFCO. I think it was just an initial conversation, but I don't know if when and if we get to that item, if there's any sort of like background or contextual information that can be provided to all the participants so that we come in knowing what has been discussed, again, what the categories are, you know, as current, and all of that information so that we come in a little bit more informed and can kind of have, I think, a better discussion. Because I do recall that conversation at least coming up sort of initially in one of those Special Districts Advisory Committee meetings.
Yeah, we can provide a bit more context to that item as we work towards that.
And just to follow up, Heather, so you're absolutely right. We have a policy, I think it was on the screen, this rule number 4 that guides our task and statute to establish and maintain authorized service functions and classes for all special districts. And a few years back, there was an item that came before LAFCO that really highlighted how out of date our policy was. And one of the things that for this group is when it comes to resource conservation districts, we really didn't have certainly a handle on RCDs beyond what they were doing in 1975. So as Don mentioned, you know, appropriately so, RCDs have evolved to be much more service related and have a much broader compass of things that they do. This group would be an ideal source of information in informing what would be appropriate functions and classes for LAFCO to take back to the Special District Advisory Committee for their sign off as we then proceed to the commission to update this policy. But that's a good observation, Heather.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll go to item 5, which is explore opportunities for shared service agreements, i.e. grant writing, financial resources, whatever the case may be. I think through the communications that I previously had with the 3 of you and maybe some of the things that popped up today, is trying to make sure that your worlds and needs are being met through alternative methods and mechanisms, and trying to highlight what avenues those may be while staying consistent with the rules and regulations in which LAFCO governs. Okay, so that's, see a thumbs up by Darcy. Heather?
Oh, I was just gonna make one last comment
Yeah.
on that last item. I think that's super important, and I really think that's sort of the meat of why we're here. But with that, I really do want to echo, Don's point about the, some sort of baseline funding for RCDs, which RCDs don't currently receive, unlike other special districts, would be really helpful. And so one of those things when we talk about shared resources is also sort of alternative funding structures within that. So RCDs sort of have a difficult, funding journey as we're currently defined. But if there are innovative funding mechanisms there or resource sharing opportunities there that are innovative, I think that would be something that if we can start that here in San Diego and figure out how to do that among the 3 RCDs here, that's something that could actually potentially be scalable to statewide. And so that's something that maybe this becomes sort of an incubator experiment to a certain extent with RCDs when we get to that item too, or at least to consider some of those options.
Thank you, Heather. Any others? So again, that's the general framework of a working agenda that I put together based on previous conversations with the 3 RCDs and internal discussions and communications with staff. Perhaps it's best and appropriate to open up the floor now to the RCDs. Is there anything that I'm missing? Anything that you would like to add for this working group to potentially look into, to tackle, to take on, and provide in this agenda?
I think this is a good start. Thank you.
Okay. Perfect. So what I will do is I will edit what's being displayed as that document. I will edit it based on our deliberations and comments and communications today. I will then distribute it all out to you either this afternoon or tomorrow, so that we all have that in our records and that we're all in complete understanding with the full expectations of what we're tasked to do as a group. So before concluding the item, Tammy or Erica, are there any members of the public that have provided current or previously submitted comments for this?
No, I've received no public comments for item 5.
And no live email comments.
Thank you. Okay, that will conclude business item 5C, and we'll move on to our last item, which should be very brief. It's item 5D, and it's requests or comments from any other committee members. This is an opportunity for you to request action or report out on any matter not on today's agenda. Does anybody have any more to say? Okay, having seen none, that will conclude business item 5D. And before we adjourn, I just, want to thank everybody for their time and commitment going forward on this. I think collectively as a group, we're going to find some positive solutions here and make sure that the LAFCO world matches and meets what you guys are doing out there. Because I know a lot of those programs and resources and service that you provide are wholeheartedly important to the community. And then real quick, kind of informal poll. With setting up maybe our next meeting, did the doodle poll work for everybody? Is that sufficient to try again next time, or how do you want me to do this to kind of set up our next date? Is there a preference to times or dates that everybody knows today, or do you want me to set up another doodle poll to kind of shoot out there for our next meeting? And did that work? Frank?
Yeah, I would just like something consistent, like, is it going to be the first Tuesday of the month, or is it going to be the third Wednesday, or whatever at the same time? Because my calendar is so booked, I can't just change it every time. So if we could get something fairly consistent, that would be helpful.
Okay, if that's more preferred. I mean, we're on the second Tuesday of this month. Do you want to keep it to the second Tuesdays of each month? So our next meeting would be November 8th at 10 a.m.
I personally won't be able to make that day, but
No, I can't.
that wouldn't be true for every second Tuesday. It's just that particular second Tuesday.
I can't do second Tuesdays in general.
Okay. Third Tuesdays. I want to work with you guys, so I'm amenable to all your guys' times and commitments and schedules, and I know you guys have busy worlds out there, but want to respect Frank's kind of comments and desires, and if we want to stay away from that doodle pool, it's kind of complicated, and I get it. So third Thursday would be November 15th, and kind of stays away from the holidays, and it's in between the months, and I don't know how. Please speak up.
It doesn't.
That's
work-
fine with me.
It doesn't work for me
Works for me.
if we're meeting in the mornings.
Okay.
If we go to the afternoons, I can do it.
Afternoon's fine for me.
What was that, Amy?
I can't do the afternoon on the third Tuesday because that's my groundwater management authority meeting.
Frank, it sounds like you're getting overruled, and I got to send out a doodle.
No, that's fine. What I'm trying to say though is that when we send it out and we pick a day for our next meeting, let's try to get it to where everybody's calendars are synced up and we know it's going to be whatever day at the same time of the month, the same, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It
I mean, I don't
does.
care if it's at 8 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday. Just give me a time
Okay. Well,
that I can block off in my calendar every month so I know this is RCD.
perhaps what I'll do is I'll task myself to kind of reach out to all of you individually, and I know it might be tedious, but maybe I can work with all of you individually to kind of get a general understanding of what your openness is from a calendar standpoint, and maybe I can find some consistency through that end, and then we can go from there. So I'll task myself to do that, and so to be determined on our next meeting, but we will try to get that on our calendar as soon as possible to appease everybody's time.
Adam, this is Darcy.
Yep.
Just for the sake of your valuable time, why don't you just send out a doodle poll, and everyone will keep in mind that when they pick a day that we'll try and do that same consistent Wednesday at noon or whatever. So that might be easier for you.
Okay.
There's a lot of people here and we all have, catch them.
You can,
Mary,
Adam, I have to go. I have another meeting.
Mary, thank you for attending.
Okay,
Thank you so
thanks.
much. We'll be in touch.
Adam, you can send out that doodle poll to the third. You can set up so it's the first, second, third, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday,
Yeah.
whatever you
I'll set up
decide.
kind of a block, and then
Yeah.
I'll get an understanding of what everybody's commitment is. So, okay, we'll flush it out.
Thanks for trying to work with everybody.
No problem. This is my second ad hoc. This is the easier one. So,
I think it's called herding cats in the
Cats.
ranching world. So
for instance, so. Okay, I won't take any more of your time. We're 10 minutes over the hour that I promised you that we would take. So with that, that goes to item 6, which is our adjournment, and today's meeting concludes at 11:10 a.m. And again, thank you for everybody's time and participation.
thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you. Bye.
Bye.